Welcome to the A to Z podcast. Zach Jackson, Andre Knott, at Akron Jackson, at Dre Knott on most of your favorite social media platforms, at A2Zpodcast.com, at Facebook.com/A to Z podcast. Shouts as always to Scene, to the Honeymoon Grill, to American Fireworks, always open at AmericanFireworks.com. Cleveland sports fans, just like you guys, good folks, they've supported us for a long time. You guys have supported us for a long time, and we appreciate it. We always say that. We always lead with that. If you're one of the new folks here, first, welcome. Second, we get excited. We say four-letter words, and we venture into immature subjects. So if any of that's not for you, or if you're in a work environment, put on earbuds or come back to A to Z at another time. Dre, good morning, good afternoon. What is it? I mean, I'm in this like weird post-season hangover phase.
I know.
You know, I've worked this week. I've showered this week. I've done, kept up on the times. But it's just so weird. And, one of the things I want to talk about is you and I were talking about this last week. Obviously, the Browns not making it the playoffs in 18 years and having the kind of physically and mentally exhausting season they had with the COVID stuff is different anyway. Baseball seasons, normal ones are long, and you've been fortunate enough to be around when the Indians are long. Like, it's not just us on the outside. Like, these teams that make real runs, they have a real combination of maturity, luck, focus, mental energy, because the shit's draining, man. It really is.
It is. And the thing is, it is. And the thing that Browns fans found out and are reminded of this week, and it's what you're going through right now. And Terry Francona was great at talking about this, and I've had players tell me about this too, in all leagues, is that like the euphoria of making the playoffs and being in the playoffs, whether it's Zach Jackson or whether it's Kevin Stefanski, it's like a drug. And you're going 125 miles an hour safely, but you're going 125 miles an hour, and you're buckled in, and then you just crash into a wall when it's over. And Terry Francona's gone as far to tell me, which is crazy, and I think he'll be okay with me saying this. He said even after winning World Series, and I had some Cavs players, and I won't say their names, they were bench players, they said the same thing, that as great as it was to win a championship, and it is great, you have that, for a couple days after you win, you're riding high, and like Terry has said it, and then suddenly you get in your car one day, or you're sitting in your living room one day, and you're just like, fuck, it's over. Like, for better or worse, and it is a hangover. It is a crazy, because I think it's an emotional thing. Because I started this before we even started the podcast. I kind of said to you, like, all right, what's on the work, schedule now? Like, you bust my balls now. You're like, I can't wait until you go back to work.
And I can't.
And you say that. And I know. And well, I get it. You're like one of 5 people that say that. You're right up there with Jen. Like you're right up there with the people I annoy the most. It's like, it goes, my wife, you, Dennis, Rob, my mom, like the people that I text and mess with the most are all like, when is he going to go back to work? Because I'm full of energy and ideas, as you just heard for the first 15 minutes of you and I talking. I got all these ideas, all these great things I want to do. And we both know, give me 2-3 months and I'm going to be like, F you, I don't got time. I want to go take a nap. It is something different when it's done. Like, you're not worried about writing your on Friday about the matchup. You're not worried, and nobody wants to hear that, because most people that are listening to this podcast right now are like, shit, I would love to hear Zach break down the Bills and the Browns. Let me ask you that quickly, because we got some ideas of what we're going to talk about in this one. But for you, have you, because I think there is a story in The Athletic kind of talking about Mahomes versus our guy from Buffalo, and how this is, a little bit like we had last week, obviously with Mayfield, with Baker, but have you paid attention to anything that's been said about this Kansas City Buffalo Bills game coming up on Sunday?
Not really. I mean, I've been monitoring Mahomes' progress, and everybody believes he'll be cleared to play. I think it's the foot that will be more the issue.
I do too.
He was
limping
anything
around
else.
today too. You're right.
But it's funny, Dre, because one of the things I had to do for my real job was submit a list of ideas, like, what are we going to write about? Obviously, it's not every day anymore, right? Or all the time leading up to a game, and that is the good part about covering football, is you do have a structure ahead of these games. But, one of the things I submitted, if the Bills win, is, they, until Tyrod Taylor got them there a few years ago, they had the longest playoff drought in the NFL, right? And now they've changed it around, and Brian Dable, who was frankly a joke when he was in Cleveland 11 years ago, He's not going to get a head coaching job this cycle for whatever reason. I think there's only one left, but like they brought in a new GM, they brought in a new coach, they failed. The cities are similar, right? So like taking a deep dive into what they did to become a Super Bowl team, if they become that. I don't know that anybody's going to beat the Chiefs at Arrowhead. I won't be stunned, and I just think the Bills are playing really well. I think Diggs has changed everything for them. And obviously Allen's coming along. But, yeah, that's one of the things I submitted. On the KC side, I'm not going to talk about what I submitted because I don't want someone else to steal the idea, quite frankly. It's kind of fascinating, though, because just like last week, like if it's a full Arrowhead, that impacts the game. Does it impact the game 1 point, 7 points at one point in the game? I don't know, but it does. Do I feel like Josh Allen being able to chuck it 75 yards down the field and Mahomes maybe not being 100% and the Chiefs not being able to run the ball at all matter? Yeah, like I look for a competitive, really fun, like glued to your couch kind of game. But also like to sit here and think that I could pick against Travis Kelce and Tyreek Hill and Andy Reid and Pat Mahomes and Tyrann Mathieu for that matter? No, I'm not sure I could.
I think Buffalo, the crazy, and I hear you. And we're not going to put a bunch of time into this. I'll say this. I've paid more attention to Buffalo over the last month. And, yes, Diggs gets a lot of talk. Allen gets a lot of talk. They have a nameless defense that's really good. That's way better than any of us give. And I'm not attacking you. They've got a solid defensive scheme and plan, and it works. I'm not – if Mahomes ain't right, it's going to be a close game. And we don't talk about this stuff all the time because it's easier to talk about the quarterbacks and all that offense Kansas City has. Kansas City is vulnerable, especially without that crowd. I'm not saying Buffalo's going there to win, but their defense is way better than what I thought it was a month ago. And I can't even pinpoint why it is, but it is.
Well, I'll say this.
They got a really good corner. They got a safety to play well together. They play, and they've got the big kid that's got all the brothers, the middle linebacker. Who's really they've got some players.
Edmonds, he's got all the brothers. Mm-hmm. He does have a lot of brothers, and they're all athletic.
Two of them play for, and they all play for. Two of them play for the Steelers. One of them got cut last week. And Dwayne Haskins, Haskins is now a Pittsburgh Steeler. Yeah.
If Mahomes isn't right, I think the Bills win the game. I don't think you need him just in the things he does, and because as much as that offense clicks and is able to masterfully mix the misdirection with the vertical threat, with the throwing underneath threat to make you lay off the vertical threat, like it's because of what he does. You have to take the ball away from him, right? You have to score on them, but if he's not right with his foot, or if he would get hit again and have to leave the game, then I will definitely take the Bills.
I bet they don't run the option. I bet they don't.
No, and listen, these coaches will tell you if that's one less thing you got to prepare for, then they've won that little battle, right?
Yep, you're right.
Yeah, man, that's.
Hey, let me say something else back to you. And I don't like going back on podcasts. I stand even harder on punting on fourth down now that I went back and saw some things. Hey, man, I don't think Stefanski was trying to bleed the clock in that last drive. And we don't got to go back and forth about this. There are some blockers, and I think Wyatt Teller would tell you this, J.C. Treader would tell you this. If some guys get their blocks on the plays that were called by Kevin Stefanski, it would have not looked like they were trying to drain the clock. Chris Jones made two hell of a plays on that last drive. And I hate doing this, but, we talked on Monday, and we talked right after the game, and I hadn't really gone back and looked. You go back and look at some of the play calls and how they didn't get blocked or schemed up well like they usually did for the Browns this season. I am more on Kevin Stefanski's side than I was when we talked about it because guys just didn't execute the plays that were called. Whether they slipped, there was one play where Bitonio was coming around the left side. He just didn't get to the linebacker thing he didn't get to. If he gets to that linebacker, it's a 15, 20-yard run. And I know that, that's the game, though, right? I'm not complaining. I'm just saying when we went back and forth on punting on fourth down, I totally get it now and seeing certain things just weren't executed. They needed to be executed.
No, I'm just going to say fundamentally, I think that's what podcasts and specifically this one are for. you might as well go back and say it. It's conversational. We're talking ball, right?
Right, for sure.
Yeah,
it's funny though, because as it happens, I'm sitting there watching it, and I'm like, man, if Jay Treader gets his block, we're sitting here and we're talking about, you know what I mean? You know how it is. We're like, and that's the game, and that's the beauty of the game.
Well, that's what we said though. Like, that's the thing. The better team won, but the Browns definitely left opportunities out there. And as you go through the various circumstances, from the fumble to the helmet-to-helmet hit, to the Chiefs' missed field goals, to Mahomes leaving the game, to all the way that played out, where the Browns had that chance and didn't convert. Like, the Browns, there were multiple times where they did not execute, right? And that's what's frustrating. It is because, you know, one play changes. It's never one play, but one play changes a lot. And if Higgins scores, that changes the shape, right? Yeah. If they convert one of those third downs early and aren't in 3rd and 11 and throwing a 2-yard pass, you know, all of those things are tied together. They most certainly are. And, yeah, I mean, Andrew Berry was on the radio this morning with Raj and Ken, and they started with just, you know, how do you digest it? And he said he hasn't been able to watch the film yet. I mean, this is the guy that runs the show. So, like, these things linger, guys. You know? They do. And honestly, that is part of why I think Kevin Stefanski is the right guy. Like, of course he's a human, and of course he has emotions, and of course he's great in moments and imperfect in others and whatever. But, like, he has both displayed and talked about at times the importance of staying low-key, of staying in the moment. Right. Like, there's so many decisions in a game, like whether he nailed the last one or royally fucked it up, he's got to hit the next one for his team.
Yep.
Right?
Yep.
And, yeah, so that's kind of how it goes. There's a lot of disappointment that lingers. The Browns will start to turn the page. You know, the coaches will get a week or so off to digest. Andrew is not going to the Senior Bowl, which he didn't go last year. That's fine. It looks like they drafted really well. I'm only a little bit surprised this year because it seems like it could be the only time you're really going to get face-to-face with guys. There will be a pro day circuit, but it's going to be highly regulated. So, you know, we'll see.
This is crazy.
I'm trying to think of the best way to say this. Right. Of course, the disappointment lingers because you're there. But what it comes down to is that very patient, very removed, very objective evaluation of where you really are and how you get there. Right? I don't think one slip from Joel Bitonio kept the Browns from raising the trophy.
No,
right?
For sure.
No,
not
everyone knows that.
Not at all.
Just like, but on the flip side of that, when you look at how well the offense played from December on, and you think about they didn't have an off season, this is going to be the first time Baker doesn't have a new system, Nick Chubb doesn't have a new system. I think people downplay that too. Like, running backs need to know where to read their keys and how they're getting their handoffs and stuff like that, right?
For sure.
Like, organically, this offense should grow. And unfortunately in the NFL,
no doubt.
Yeah, unfortunately in the NFL, personnel, you can't count. I mean, obviously the elites are the elites, but man, everybody's freakish in this league, and there's so much injury. Careers are so short, and guys get fat and hungry for their money, and guys get their money and they don't want it, and guys are less motivated, and all of these things, right? But like, if you build the right systems and have the right guys in charge and really know what you want on your team, and frankly, last year Andrew Berry didn't get hired till 2 weeks after what we're talking to you right now. You know, he had been around the Browns, but he didn't know a ton of those guys. There's only 7 guys on this year's team that were on the 0-16 team. Like, if you're really gonna preach smart, tough, and accountable, and those are really gonna be at the top of every evaluation, then you have to go through a season to know who really is those things. So, I think it's all positive, and I think the disappointment lingering and the nitpicking that you do, those are positives too, because that means you have some real expectations, and it's been forever since we've had that.
Yeah, these are all the good things that go along with this, and I think that's where. And I said this in the pod on Monday, and I'll say it again. I just find it ridiculous. I can barely listen to the radio this week because people are already trying to get rid of. At one point, and you know who you are. Do you keep Odell or do you keep Landry? Like, this ain't the time for. I guess maybe it is the time for this. Maybe it is. I find it to be ridiculous personally. I find it to be ridiculous because I think just like you learn how to lose, you got to learn. I think I want to say this the right way. I think this town with football, unfortunately, has learned how to lose and how to deal with losing. And our usual in dealing with losing and dealing with this month that is already hard is we've got to take all the furniture out and rearrange the furniture because the furniture didn't work in the setup that they had last year. Well, lo and behold, the furniture kind of did work this year. And the only way you get better is by saying two of those furniture pieces, okay, that fits there, that fits there. This didn't fit that well this way. And I thought, and I'm pretty sure Andrew Berry said this, but he basically said, Zach, and you were listening, I kind of read through it and I heard bits and pieces, but the offense didn't take off until after the bye week. They were able to rely on the running game. They were able to win ugly and weather. They didn't really find the identity of the offense until about, week 8, week 9? By that time, Odell was already gone. And I think, look, when you talk about Browns needs, Rizzo asked me this other night on TV, and I instantly went defense. And then I texted him afterwards, and I'm kind of like, for all that we're saying, they better regardless of what you do with 13, regardless, they're going to have to draft, in my opinion, they got to draft a wide receiver regardless. No offense to Kamara Hodge.
Yeah.
No offense to Peoples-Jones.
Higgins is a free agent.
Corners, Higgins is and he'll probably – if Higgins came back last year, I can't see why he wouldn't come back this year.
Well, because now he's going to have an actual market. That's why. I can't see why he wouldn't come back here either. But, he came back for nothing because nobody else wanted him, right? He was a free agent for 2 months, right?
Well, if you listen to Cleveland radio, he was the hottest commodity ever. You're the only one that was against it a year ago. I'm not saying you're wrong.
No.
You're wrong.
Listen, we'll do this later, but that's the fascinating thing. You're right. They took off without OBJ. However, they took off without OBJ. Like, Baker was not the same player. The offense was not the same thing. And, when you look at Baker's numbers and really dig into them, which we've talked about here and I've written about, remember how in the first month of the season, he didn't throw any passes in the fourth quarter of games because he didn't have to. They didn't play in the first game because they lost by 1 million, and then the next 3 they blew people out and they ran the ball because they got the best 2 running backs in the league, right? They just didn't get in situations where they had to, and then even after the bye week when they felt really good about, okay, we've massaged the playbook, okay, we have more command here. The first 2 games were played in freaking tornadoes, so they didn't even really get there,
Right.
Yeah. And then, the Eagles game, which was bad weather, but not near as bad as the previous 2. There was goofy things. Both teams turned a ball over in the red zone, and it was kind of a wild shootout game disguised as a game that was low scoring and bad weather. And it's then they took off. But the Steelers game in Week 6 when they got killed, and you guys know because you listen, and there's commenters who bring up things we say on A to Z all the time. And I wrote the column. After the Pittsburgh game, I was like, okay, the Browns are getting better, but they don't have a quarterback. He was a totally different guy from on there, and he earned everything. That Cincinnati game the next week is when OBJ got hurt, and that's when his numbers, started to take off. Before that, guys, when you're at 6.1 yards per attempt in the NFL, you're not going to be in the NFL. He finished at 7.3. So that's how much it took off, right? So
let me run you into, and I like that, but let me run you into something because then I want to go kind of do the high school superlatives per se for the Cleveland Browns season. We'll give our ideas on our favorite player, favorite game, favorite MVP, all that bullshit. Then I want to talk some Cavs with you, but I've always been a fan of this person, but I've become a fan of Poznansky's writing for The Athletic. Great writer. He was in Kansas City forever. He's from Cleveland originally. If you have The Athletic already, check him out. but I'm stealing this from him. He followed me, started following me on Twitter a couple days ago or a couple weeks ago, whatever. When I read this last night, I almost texted you at midnight because I was just like in tears, laughing and crying. The Browns' top 5 tacklers. Now, this is your job, so I won't put this on you. But I'm going to read Joe's diary from this week off The Athletic, and then we're going to get a cry out of this and move forward. Because this is the best thing that I've heard to tell you how great this season was, but how unbelievable it was. This is Joe. To give you an idea of the last part, I want to show you the Browns' 5 leading tacklers in 2020. Zach, could you do the top 5 tacklers of the Browns? And it's not
because those aren't official stats. It's not something I'd ever look at. But like, could I guess it?
Why you got to be such a nerd? They're not official stats. They're not when they all. I get it. It's not like we're sitting here giving them contracts. But go ahead. Give me your guess on these non-official stats.
B.J. Goodson.
Ding, ding, ding.
Andrew Sendejo.
He was actually number 3. Yes.
Yeah. Well, I mean, tale as old as time. When your safeties are your leading tacklers, you either got Sean Taylor or your team sucks. Right? Your defense, not your team.
Right, but this makes the point. I am so glad we're doing it. And we did not rehearse this. I'm doing this without telling them. Because last night I was like, oh my God.
Is Taki on there? Did he play enough snaps to be on there?
Taki came in 5th. So here, I'll give you you did good enough. You got 3 out of 5. B.J. Goodson, a free agent signed because the Browns simply didn't have any linebackers. This is his 3rd team in 3 years. Number 2, Malcolm Smith, the 2013 Super Bowl MVP, is now 31 years old. The Browns signed him to a 1-year deal, making Cleveland his 6th NFL team since he won that award. Number 3, defensive back Andrew Sendejo. The Browns signed the 33-year-old undrafted free agent off waivers. Cleveland is his 5th and probably last team. The last team part I put in there. 4th, safety, Carl Joseph.
See, that's I would have not gotten him because a lot of the year he didn't start.
I know. He wasn't in a lot of, but you know what? You and I, we talk. Real defenses in the NFL aren't 4-3-3-4s anymore, right? And Joe Woods wants to play. He wants to play a 3 safety. When they're right, they'll play 3 safeties at once. That's part of the reason why they drafted Grant Delpit. But it says that Joseph, another player Brown signed to a 1-year deal before the start of the year. He was a utility defensive back. Then Taki, 3rd year. That was your top 5 tacklers. I mentioned that because everybody that loves the Browns, and I thought B.J. Goodson had a good season. I don't think he was Mike Singletary, but he had a good season. And, I mean, if I would have told you that list on August 31st, Zach and Andre probably would have told you the Browns went 4-12.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, so and the one thing about my prior observation that's wrong is that I guess in today's NFL, your safeties do make a lot more tackles because the ball just goes down the field more than it used to.
And it's in the air, right? And, I also bring this up because I hear a lot of people like having the Joe Woods fight, and to me, when you're having the Joe Woods fight, you don't understand what you're looking at. I mean, I just told you the 5 top tacklers on the Browns defense, and none of those guys are going to be on the cover of Madden. Most of those guys don't even get their names set on Madden. They're just the number 53. Like, what they put together defensively, was it a great defense? Not in any shape, way, or form. But you got to give some credit that they had a coach that got the best out of them. Obviously, the best that they got out of them was getting turnovers and turning them into points. I give a lot of credit, and I just wanted to do it this way because I've got a couple people that tweet at me constantly about Joe Woods. I have a feeling, well, maybe not because black coaches don't get hired in the NFL. That's a whole other story. That's some bullshit, Zach, and that's another podcast. Did you see the clowns that got drafted? There's no offense to the guys that got picked as head coaches today. There's none at all. And Dan Campbell, I kind of get a chuckle out of you. Chris Billman obviously has a lot of pull in Detroit. Detroit needs a football guy after what they went through. But I got to tell you guys, as a black male in 2021, that we got this bullshit Rooney Rule, and they keep making up more bullshit rules to try to get black head coaches. And we're getting like pizza delivery guys as head coaches in certain cities. Like, who's the guy at Philadelphia? And just because I don't know who they are does not mean they can't be a great coach. I'm not that type of asshole. I don't know every situation, and I don't know how every team is run. As a matter of fact, I will give the Haslam's credit. They've been very open They've hired bad black GMs and good black GMs, bad black coaches and good black.
That's so true.
But that's all I'm asking for, Zach. That's all people that look like me are asking for. Give us the same chances everybody else is getting. Like, why can't? Okay, Hugh Jackson's a bad coach. Thank you for letting us see. Who's the black dude that was texting down to the sideline for the quarterback? He ain't deserve a job. Get his black ass out of here.
No, he was the worst GM in probably in NFL history.
Yes, but see, I can admit that. But at least the Haslam's were like, you know what? Even though he was calling Sashi Obama, which is racist as shit, that's a whole other story. But at least they went out and got Andrew Berry, and Andrew Berry fits. Like, why? Like, as I look around the league and look at all these other jobs, look, here's the one thing we know, and I didn't even mean to talk about this, but it happened. The NFL stands for not for long. Let some brothers have some not for long jobs. If they bad, they gotta go. We know how it works, but if they're good, I mean, at some point in time, and I'll say this to the racists that don't want to hear this, when you have this many men that look a certain way that are on the field, and look, everybody, we all play hard for people that we trust. The one Baker comment that I love when it comes up about Stefanski, and he says this all the time, and to me, it's the most chilling thing that can be said about Freddie Kitchens, is Baker's always goes out of his way is to say, guys can tell a fake right away, right?
Yep.
And whether he's a white fake, whether he's a black fake, we know fakes. And I want to say this the right way because I have not worked for a lot of black bosses per se, because they're really, but I would love for some of these owners and guys that are making decisions to have an understanding of what it would mean to some of these guys to play for guys that look like them. Now, I'm not saying you just hire somebody because they're black. That's bullshit. And I get that we usually hire, if we're in charge of hiring, we usually hire people that we are comfortable with, that we know well, that we speak the same language as. And when you do that half the time, you know what ends up happening? You end up losing your fucking job too. So, and nothing's going to, I don't know. I'm to the point now where I don't think things are going to change. But this is embarrassing, man. It's embarrassing.
Well, I mean, their Airbnb thing is so outrageous given where he's been and given that the path has always been be a coordinator on a winning team, right? Like, I don't know him. I don't know anybody that knows him well. Dre, the only explanation is that there's something that's not out there, right? And I hate to even bring that up and begin to speculate, right. But like when Nick Sirianni, who didn't even call the plays in Indy, is getting a job. When Brandon Staley, right, and I love you, Perry Pirates, is getting a job. Like, there's got to be something there that's saying to owners, we can't hire this guy. That's the only explanation I have. I don't know what it is. That's the only explanation I have.
Because I don't have the explanation, I don't have the answer, I don't even want to guess. Did he have some issues earlier in life? Did he have a DUI? Yes. Did he have an incident in the college parking lot? Yes. And I'm pretty sure if I go through Dan Campbell, and no offense to Dan Campbell because I like him, but I'm pretty sure I go through Dan Campbell's previous life. I'm pretty damn sure I can find some dirt. There's dirt on everybody if you look far enough and if you want that to matter. I get what you're saying, but that to me in 2021 that's a bullshit answer too, because there's no clean candidates per se anymore. Anything in life, and if somebody is good enough for a job and proven over time, and I would like to think that put it this way: do you think if the Detroit, and I'm just using the Lions, do you think if the Lions brought Eric Bieniemy in as a head coach, that people in Detroit would be in an uproar and something that happened in his life 25 years ago? If the Ford family gets up in front and simply says, this is the best candidate that we feel for the Detroit Lions to move forward, do you really think that the backlash would be that bad right now?
No, zero. I don't. There'd be zero. Right.
I don't either. So I think it's just I'm not saying for you, but it's a very it's an easy excuse to use to move on. And we don't got to go on and on about this because to me, you as a white man, me as a black man, I think when we sit down and we're being sensible, we all see something's not working right, and it's not for you or I to figure out how. It's not pieced together and working. And I'm for the best candidate to get the job at anything and everything. I just want it fair.
Yeah. Yeah. No. I'll just say this because we've had this conversation to an extent before, but like everybody keeps expecting Bieniemy's going to get a job, right, and not be the only one.
Right.
The intent of the Rooney Rule, guys. I mean, yes, the ultimate goal is to make sure minorities get hired, but the intent is to give opportunities to interview to people that wouldn't get it.
Right.
So they, A, get the experience, and B, they get on the radar because there is so much turnover. So when Coach Joe Smith gets that interview, right, and one of the guys in the room is the director of pro personnel for the Lions, right, or the salary cap guy, for the Texans, and 2 years later that man is a GM, he says, you know who knocked our socks off but just wasn't ready 2 years ago? This guy. Right? And like Dan Campbell's been on the interview circuit for 6 years. He didn't get as much face time with the Browns as Josh McDaniels and Adam Gase did, but like he's been there, right? Yeah. That's jarring to hear Brandon Staley. And again, I don't know Brandon. I know his background, and I sure as shit support Northeast Ohioans and public school Northeast Ohioans more than anything. To hear that he got a job, like something's just not missing, because the intent of the rule to get Bieniemy on the circuit, Dre, has been there, right? That part has worked. Saleh didn't get a job last year. He did. Dable's new to it. He didn't. The Eagles interviewed Josh McDaniels. They're the only team. Then they hired Nick Sirianni, and no one else interviewed him.
It's just odd, and it's just not Eric Bieniemy. And I'll take it a step further, because we can't. And I'll move on from this. We can't say it's already happened. Okay, Eric, you don't give. But the only how this is going to change, some of these teams are going to have to start being willing to let some of these black guys be more of the running back coaches. Like it's okay to let them call, like, because I see these other offensive coordinators that don't call plays, but they get jobs. You know what I mean? Like it's part of it, and it's an easy way to overlook it. Yeah. And I don't want to speak like Josh Cribbs and I have had long talks about this over the last couple of years. And I don't want to put in Josh's mouth. But we talk, and he's had opportunities to go coach, and he's a TV star in Cleveland currently. We could have talks about that as well. But it is, I've talked to more than just Josh, so I don't want to make this a Josh thing. But I've talked to many former players, black guys that want to coach, that want to do it, but they also have too much pride right now to jump into something where they feel like they're going to get treated like shit when they may be the smartest guy in the room, or where they may have a better connection with certain players and guys, but because ownership won't step that far, or the general manager's afraid to talk to him, or the general manager doesn't like him because he played and the general manager didn't play. And so it's a weird disconnect that we have going on right now, and I don't know how to fix it, but I think it's bullshit. I'll tell you that much.
Well, the NFL knows that it's an awful look. So I don't know what it is. Frankly, I don't know if that leads to somebody leaking something on Bieniemy, right? Or the Texans hiring him because they think it can help them keep Deshaun Watson. I don't know. It's awful.
And that's the job I wouldn't take if I was them. I wouldn't want nothing to do.
Because that place is toxic as hell. Sure.
Right.
I mean, I'll say this for Dan Campbell, like, that team is so boring and so bad and expectations are so low that a guy comes in and talks about the stuff that he talked about and is all rah-rah and blue-collar and we embrace the city. Like, that's what they need right now,
Yes, I say that, and then I also saw Freddie Kitchens today.
Well,
I saw that.
No, you're right.
You know what I mean?
No, and we've danced that
Dan's
dance.
more
Listen,
qualified.
I'll just tell you this. I'm the wrong person to talk to about this for one reason. I've been through so many of these coaching searches and so many of these intro press conferences that I tune them all out. Right?
Me too. Same. You're right.
Yeah.
I'm in the same boat. I totally agree with you with that.
Yeah.
It's hard for me to judge anybody because.
All right. So as we shift gears here,
all right, go ahead.
As we shift gears here, if you're a new listener, you'll know that we occasionally talk Cleveland Indians here. We occasionally talk Cleveland Browns or Ohio State or life. But the main thing we talk about is the Cleveland Cavaliers. And we've been telling you guys for a long time that Collin Sexton is a really good player, and he is the kind of guy that's going to engineer a turnaround like this league has never seen. I can't even finish my sentence.
Come on, dog. You got to finish. Come on, dog. Hey, Hey, man, number one, don't be tweeting to be about me in NBA basketball in the month of January because everybody knows your ass don't watch, but they got you to watch last night. Couple things. The Nets. This is what I love about sports because it's like life. Everything about how the Nets have been put together, I hate. But I've watched every quarter that they've played since they put that team together. Like, it's intriguing. They're going to give up 140 a night, and they're going to score 140 a night. But let's go to Collin Sexton's side of this. I don't know what he is overall. He's talented as shit, number one. He's not the same type of talent as Kyrie, and that may be okay for multiple reasons. I think last night, and I'm not saying he's a star, but he's better than what most of us have thought. And I've had a couple people that know college basketball pretty well and SEC basketball. And I had a guy text me last night, and he said, I told you he has some Russ Westbrook to him when it comes to scoring and taking over. He goes, better shooter, plays hard. He goes, but he's got that – and the point was, he goes, he's got that same dog in him. When you put other great players on the court, he wants to say that he's one of the best. That was an unbelievable performance last night. I'm not expecting it to happen again on Friday night. I kind of like what the Cavs are doing for their situation, Zach. I do. You put a bunch of trees in the middle because, look, you're going to play those two little guards up front. You better have somebody to stop them back. And they're going to put the dude with the afro. I like Allen, what he's about.
Well, yeah. How can that kid's 22 years old.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And he doesn't beg for the ball. You know what I mean? Like he'll pick and roll to death, which is awesome.
Well,
Larry Nance is a great glue guy. Do they still need a wing? And maybe the kid from Auburn is there. Is this the LeBron Cavs? No. But you know what it kind of can remind me of? The type of Cavs teams we watched when we were growing up at the Coliseum.
Well, I don't really watch, and I'm open about that, right? So I do watch a lot of college basketball, and I know. But, frankly, like Darius Garland played 4 college basketball games. So I don't know shit about him, except remember when I turned on the TV and said, oh, my God, I can't believe he's that small, right?
Yeah,
yeah. I've followed enough to know that Seti has played well. And, he's a guy that can be on a team that can win. I'll just say this. I know that the Cavs have done 2 things that matter. One is having Larry Nance, and he's tied to the last generation, right? But committing to him and letting him be, knowing that he is a good person and a local kid. And, will, in an era where everyone's on social media and he's on there doing good things and speaking honestly and not being an idiot.
Right.
Like committing to him was right. Because listen, even if he's just okay, and I think he's a little better than okay, there's a lot worse contracts in the NBA than his, right? No but doubt. I think more than anything, and I'm leaving Sexton out of these 2 things, I credit their front office for going and getting guys for nothing. I don't know what's going to happen with Andre Drummond, but they got him for nothing. So why not? Right? Because you have to embrace what your spot is in this stuff. You have to grasp and say, here's who we are and here's where we need to go. And you don't cover 7 steps in 1 year, right? You don't draft one good player or have one good week and make up for lost time or start closing the gap in the NBA on these franchises that have these guys. Why did I watch the game last night? Because it's the first time the other 3 played together. I don't give a shit about the Cavs, right? Just being honest. But, they did that. They got Jared Allen for nothing. He's 22 years old. He has freakishly long arms. He has a lot of athletic ability. He has a tiny bit of offensive talent from what I've seen, and he's got plenty of time to harness it. He can change games with block shots and rebounds, right? And I think he had 4 blocks and 12 rebounds last night, in a game that they need to fight for. And look, as for Sexton, the Cavs really believed in the work they did on his background. Straight A student, overachiever, loves the game. What does that really matter when you go up against LeBron and those guys? I don't know. But in terms of where they were and where they thought they might be, which leads us to where they are now, they loved him. He's fearless. He's worked on his game. Nobody can take that away from him. I would tell each and every one of you to bet the Nets on Friday night when they play again. But Dre, to do this, right, to make this rebuild work, to take these pieces you got and eventually make them fit, you're going to need an overachiever somewhere in the process, right?
Yeah.
I guess I was going to say nobody lands on all these stars, but the Lakers did, right? The Nets did.
They live in a fantasy.
They live in different houses. They live in different planets. If Collin Sexton becomes a guy that occasionally does that and always busts his ass and gets on the opponent's scouting report as the guy that we have to shut down, then a year, 2 years from now, maybe you're onto something. Because this league, you got to be unique. And I see some fatal flaws in the Nets. Like who's going to guard and who's going to rebound. But
dude,
as you go forward, and Collin's still 21, 22 years old, right?
Right.
Well, if that guy is going to launch threes like that and get to the bucket and bring that energy, then eventually you can have something that a lot of other teams don't.
I would say this to you because I know you don't watch that. Look at his numbers even before last night. And here's the key thing. You're under 6'3" in the NBA. It's a rolling dice to be able to stay healthy for 82 games. And that's the problem him and Garland are going through because Garland has played much better. But they both have – there's been growth since they've both been drafted. And I don't mean body-wise, but they know how to play. And you look at the numbers, Zach, the numbers are pretty damn good. They're better than what you think is what I would say to you. And look, I'm glad the Cavs are doing what they're doing. I like Bickerstaff. I like what Kobe's doing. Look, right now, if you can get to the point that you can fight for an 8 or 7 seed or that however they have to play in, that's a huge step in this crazy ass year. Let me go to the Nets because they will be a top 3 team in the East, most likely. There's no doubt. But they built a video game team, Zach. They didn't build.
Sure did.
They have DeAndre Jordan is a 15-minute player at most. They have no size. They have no rebounding. They have no defense. And then I'll say this to you. And the problem is when you go down to the other end of the court, if last night they did it one time. Kyrie was at the top of the key, and they came up with a double screen or double pick and roll where he could pick. On one side he had Harden on his left, so he could screen roll left with Harden. And on the right was Durant, so he could screen roll with Durant. How do you stop that? I literally hit pause on the TV because I wanted to take a picture. And I was like, defensively, what do you do? And Joe Harris was standing down in a wing. Even Brody Jackson could get 3 points out of that set.
They're impressive. They're impressive in that regard. But how are they going to guard LeBron? How are they going to guard Giannis? Right?
They're not. They're not. They are not.
What I know about the NBA playoffs is after Game 2, there's very little in terms of X's and O's, right? Because you've seen it. Yep. You've done it. It comes down to physical toughness, to rebounding, and to just guarding certain guys in certain situations. And but they're fun. They're fun as hell.
Oh yeah, they're a video game. They are a video game. And I guess, I used to never care about this, but from the NBA standpoint, right now I've got the Lakers and Bucks on, and the Bucks, they're the Bucks, and the Lakers are the Lakers, right? It was more intriguing last, and I know I'm podcasting, I'm talking to you, I'm drinking a strong beer, but it's fun to watch, and I think that's what the NBA kind of has with it right now. I don't know if it sells the game overall because the Nets are more of an AAU team to me than a team well built, put together.
Oh, sure. I mean, they had to give up Jared Allen to have a chance to get Harden, and
right.
Even 10 years from now, they'll probably say that's the right move. But I mean, DeAndre Jordan's time was 2014, was it not?
Right. Yeah. So when
they're back up big, and I know this because I was driving, listening to the game on the radio early. Their backup big is Reggie Perry, who was a pretty good college player at Mississippi State. He's not going to go in the NBA right now at 22 years old and give you anything other than not against anybody good, right?
No. What they need.
So
they need to happen is
I'll say this: they're fascinating. The Cavs are not fascinating because they're still multiple years away, but how they choose to proceed with Drummond, whose contract is up, right? With JaVale, who gives you minutes and allows you to win games when I'm not sure that's the goal.
JaVale's going to be in Brooklyn. Well, I was just what I was about to watch.
Yeah, but what do they have to give you? They don't have anything left to give you.
Nothing. They got no draft picks. I'm just saying, because, look, the Cavs are trying to trade Drummond. And they plan on trading it before the deadline.
Yeah. And
you still have and this is the other thing I was going to bring up, but I still want to go back to the Browns. And you still have the issue with my favorite Cav coming into the season. He is no longer the Kevin Porter situation. The Cavs in a bad situation because everybody knows they want to get rid of this talented kid who's a knuckle. I don't even want to call him a knucklehead. Like he has some issues. I hate getting older.
Does he exemplify an A to Z theorem, Dre?
Yes, praise the Lord. Good googly goose. You're going to help me get through this. Because I was just about to say, 6-7 years ago, and 10 years ago, when you and I were sitting in a bar talking, there was other words I would call Kevin Porter. As a 42-year-old man, a couple months away from 43, and having a better understanding of some of the mental issues that people go through, whether it's just because they have some mental issues or they've been through some shit that the average person could never deal with. I will say I have more of I'm more patient in just labeling, but at the same time, Kevin Porter, the label is put upon you, and no one can change that label but you. And Zach can give the theorem because the theorem is what it is, and it plays off of Too Short thing. And I'm not calling him this. But Too Short always rapped when I was a young kid and wasn't supposed to be listening to it. Can't turn a hoe into a housewife. Now it's a little bit different because the theorem we've always had. And Zach says it so well, so Zach, this is a good time to go ahead and tell everybody what it is.
If a guy's a shithead, giving him $17 million won't make him any less of a shithead, yes.
And so far, Cavs did everything. Cavs, look.
And let's be clear, we're not calling him any names. We know he's had a rough background. I mean, it was a right. Wild card pick, right? But,
yes.
It's still disappointing. And, again, I don't know anything. I'm way on the outside of the Cavs. But because he had success as a rookie, so you would have thought that would have said, hey, man, lock in. It's all there for you, that big contract and your chance to really do it, which you've never done, which is the problem with our basketball culture. We crown these kids before they've done shit.
Thank you. And Kevin Porter got crowned in Seattle. Seattle is a hotbed for high school basketball. I know most people don't know that, but they have a real cool underground basketball thing going on in Seattle. The NBA should be back in Seattle, by the way. Kevin Porter's just been through some shit. I mean, if you read about what his father went through and who's no longer here, and he's been through some shit. But like Zach said, the problem that we have in our society is that we crown these kids way before they should be crowned, and then their sense of normalcy has been totally thrown out of whack. And Zach, you hit on it. Look, the Cavs spent $5 million on draft day to move to the 30th pick to get him. So yeah, they spent money. Just a month ago, Zach, they guaranteed his contract for $1.6, I think, this year. So you can tell me, they've almost spent $10 million to make Kevin Porter work in Cleveland, and it's not going to work.
Yeah, see, I didn't know that. That's disappointing.
But you hit on something. They found a system for him last year to work, and it's a tale of our real world as well. The COVID situation didn't help Kevin Porter because it took away the walls that the Cavs built to help him mature and get in trouble.
Absolutely. Right. Just like NFL teams got to go back to playing 2 road games next year. Right?
Right. There's the installation. The Browns put something there. The Cavs put together a really good plan to help Kevin Porter. But Kevin Porter couldn't help himself when all the protocols and everything else came in and the Cavs couldn't control. I don't want to say control, but when you're dealing with a 19, 20-year-old with the issues Kevin Porter's had, it is control. They had him in a good place.
It is.
But he got a little bit of money. We got away from the team concept because they didn't have games. And look, the Cavs went a long time without playing a game. And and we've had this discussions about college kids playing and not playing and what COVID did. And it did piss me off when I'd hear the assholes say, well, them being on a college campus is better than where they come from. I find that to be a racist bullshit thing to say. Is that the case in some situations? Sure. But it's not the case in every situation. In this Kevin Porter situation, having a schedule and having a place to be every day and being checked on every day was probably something he really, really needed. And now he's in a bad place, and it sucks. It just sucks because the story, the story isn't just here. That story is happening in high schools, junior colleges, Division III. That's a story, right? Like,
Yeah.
I know some. I don't want to get into. I know some high school kids have kind of gone through the same thing. Not as bad, obviously, but it sucks because as we watched that game last night on our text message thread, what did one person say? It looked like the Cavs really could use to really be really good.
Yeah,
a player that looks like Kevin
shout
Porter.
out to, I think it was Ben who said we need the Cavs minute on A to Z. We appreciate you guys, we really do. Dre, this is just a thought. This is not based in anything. I will watch a little bit tonight because it's Lakers Bucks, right? So I know that's a good game. That's a high level game. I just, when you cover the NFL and you're into other things, like, you have to pick, and in that regular season NBA, when the Cavs are not good, especially, makes it easy, right? To not pick them. However, I do
They're
think
a hard watch.
I do think as it comes to the trade deadline, which I believe this year is in early March, I think when it comes to Drummond and Kevin Love, because they are what the Nets don't have, I think it increases the chances that the Cavs can move those guys and get anything in return. And don't expect high value on either, right? But I think because the Nets don't have bigs, don't have a post game, don't have that, I think it increases the chances that some Eastern Conference team that fancies itself as a contender is willing to give the Cavs a young player, something like that, in return.
Kevin Love is the highest priced coach in the NBA right now. Shit. That whole situation is a whole other thing. All right, let's do a Browns superlative minute here on the A to Z podcast. Now the Brown season's over, I've got the cards. I'm going to be your Chuck Woolery. I'm going to ask some questions about Zach Jackson and the Cleveland Browns of 2020. Who's your MVP of the Cleveland Browns? I would give you an A, B, C, D, but I don't think that's fair. My A would be the offensive line. My B would be Baker Mayfield. My C would probably be the backfield combination of Nick Chubb as well as Kareem Hunt. But you take it wherever you want to go. In your mind, being around watching what you watched and saw, who's the MVP of the 2020 Browns?
Man, for most valuable player, you can't pick the O-line. I think that's the best group. I think there are three viable options. I think the quarterback, Baker Mayfield. I think Myles Garrett, but I'm going to go with Nick Chubb. I really think he's the most valuable player. He didn't have a great game in Kansas City, and they lost, but I think that strengthens his case. I think the 4 games that Nick Chubb missed made him the $45 million he's about to get.
Ooh, Wyatt Teller is saying, preach.
Yes, he is. Wyatt Teller loves that thought, yes.
Yeah, I would say I'm glad you took Nick Chubb because and anybody listening to this podcast, Nick Chubb is I won't fight you. Nick Chubb is my favorite player on the Browns. Him and Jarvis are my 2 favorite guys. And Myles does deserve a lot of credit. Hell, let's be honest. Before Myles got COVID, he was neck and neck for Defensive Player of the Year. And when I go back over what we did earlier, and we went through the leading tacklers on the Browns defense, you remember we talked about the offense coming together and how they were no good in the first 6-7 games? They won their first 4 games because of Myles Garrett. He made a play at every game. So Myles is definitely in the running. God, I hope COVID, he overcomes he just never looked the same when he came back from that. That shit's scary. I don't care what side of the
you
plank
sold him short. It was 6
on
games. The Browns were 6-3, and Myles had made a play in all 6. A game, not a play, a game-changing play. Yes.
But to go back, I agree with you. Nick Chubb is your MVP because he's your identity of your offense. He's made every guy's job on that offense easier because when he is in the game, and I got to say, Kareem is given the same thing. But when Chubb is on the field, there is a fear that not many running backs give, and he gives a toughness to this offense. I would say it'd be him and Wyatt Teller offensively because Wyatt Teller is the same thing. He brought something to this offense that we just had not seen. But I can go with that. I can totally go with that.
Hey, one quick thought. In total fairness, the fact that Baker played his way into that discussion with the way he played over the last 4, 5, 6 games is a credit to him because –
True that.
Yes. Go ahead.
You're right. No. You're right. Baker earned his way into that because Baker would not have been there a month ago. He definitely has earned his way into that, but he's not. He's not the winner this year, in my opinion. Your favorite game, your favorite Browns game of 2020. I don't have my answer yet, but I'm close, so I'm curious.
Well, I think the obvious answer is the playoff win in Pittsburgh. I mean, and I think
Tennessee game to me was, yeah, go ahead.
To the listeners, of the regular season, Tennessee was probably the most fun. Dallas is in the discussion, right?
Yes.
The Baltimore game was the best played game by both teams. The Monday night game, not the first game, obviously.
No doubt. Yeah.
But my game, the Browns game of the year, Pittsburgh wins, but for regular season, it's Tennessee.
Okay. I wanted to say the Cowboys game because Odell basically won it on your own. But you saw so many. I thought that game was just very telling for both franchises, is what I'll say, for where they were at that point in time. And I know both those franchises really well. You're right. That Monday night Baltimore game, even though it was a loss, I don't know why, Zach. I think I'll remember that game. That game was because that game had a little bit of everything in it. But I got to tell you, the Philadelphia run by Chubb may be the play of the year that I won't forget for that season. If I said what's one play that you'll remember, Chubb cutting back and fucking stiff arming that big defensive end. That was awesome to me, and I won't forget that. Is there a play that stands out to you in the season?
It was pretty good. Well, there are the spectacular, and when I knew Baker was back, is the rollout against Tennessee where three guys run inside and he waits and he lets Peoples-Jones get more open and he throws it just his body language told me that he was back to feeling it and back to feeling great about things. But honestly, the biggest play of the year, and you won't hear this anywhere else, not to toot our own horn, in the 2-minute drill in Cincinnati when Odell got hurt.
Ooh, yeah, I know where you're going.
They throw the out pass with no timeouts and 43 seconds or 37 seconds left to Rashard Higgins. And the guy doesn't touch him, and Rashard has the headiness to roll out of bounds.
Mm-hmm.
If that play is downed in bounds, the Browns don't win that game. The Browns don't go 11-5. None of this happens.
MVP move right there by Zach Jackson. That's why he is really good at what he does. He's an asshole, and he's mean on Twitter. And he thinks he's right because he articulates all his tweets just right with penmanship. But that right there is why I actually listen to A to Z podcast. Because you're right. That's a great call. My second would be, if it comes to Baker's best play of the year, I've talked about this, and I've gotten flack for it, and I'll talk about it one more time, and why I can ride on the Baker train now. The throw he made in the playoff game off of the same defense, same play call that got his ass in trouble. To me, that's the biggest step I saw from Baker, using his arm strength as a plus and not a minus, right? And I think that's that hard thing. It's just like pitchers that can throw 95 miles an hour. That's great, but if you don't throw it in the right place, it's going to go the other way. And he found that out the hard way the first time against Mika, but he used what was between his ears the second time against Mika, and threw he threw the biggest Browns. That's the biggest Browns playoff throw in 25 years, 30 years, where he hits Jarvis for that 40-yard touchdown. To me, if I'm Kevin Stefanski, if I'm Andrew Berry, that's the type of play. That's, the Indians always did something really cool when they had things rolling. And why you see the success with the pitchers now, I believe, is I love talking to Zach Plesac. I love talking to Shane Bieber, Aaron Savali, Tristan McKenzie. And they talk about, when we talk about 2016 Indians, we talk about them should have won the World Series. When I talk about those four names I just said, they talk about being around Corey Kluber, Josh Tomlin, during that playoff series, and watching how they worked, and watching how they worked in between games, and watching how they worked in between innings, and watching how they took, how they took the scouting reports, and then they went out in playoff games and used it. Shane Bieber has told me that information that they saw during that playoff run behind the scenes was invaluable in their maturity and learning what being a big league pitcher was about.
Well, that's when you have a true program, right? That's when you're in. And we weren't around the Browns this year, so it sucked from that standpoint, right? I'll tell you this. In training camp, the first two guys on and the last two guys to leave were Adrian Claiborne and Porter Gustin. And Porter Gustin didn't make a play the entire regular season. He had a pickoff in the Pittsburgh game.
Yeah.
He's a guy who's gotten, undrafted, was a street free agent when the Browns signed him with their practice squad. I don't know if either of those guys is going to be back, and frankly, if they have a great offseason, neither of them probably will. I mean, Claiborne is Super Bowl champ, respected vet.
Claiborne's a pro. He's a pro's pro.
Sure, but I don't know A, if he wants to play, or B, if he'd be welcome back if they really upgraded that position, right?
Right.
You would think he would be, right? But you don't know. He is under contract for one more year. I'm pretty confident of that without having it in front of me. But anyway, like, those are the little things you see, and those are the things that stick out. Like, if you're really going to get somewhere, who makes the sacrifices? Who does the work? And Dre, I mean, we talk about pro sports, and we're talking about it here, but this applies to the lower levels too. Who are the best players on your team, or who do you really roll with? And we sit behind microphones and argue about it, and people sit and tweet about it. If you ask the players, they know. You're not fooling them, right? Like, there's some players who are just assholes and me first guys, and they bash with coaches because they want to. But, like, they know, and you're not fooling them. So most of the time, when a coach is beefing with a player, it's because a player knows something's wrong. Like, right?
Yep.
Like, most of the time, when a coach makes an adjustment at the bye week or at halftime or at the trade deadline or whatever, it's because he's seeing what the players see, and he knows they're not being fooled by that. It's time to play this guy. It's time to not play this guy. Sometimes you get better by removing guys, right? So, you're trying to build the best team. It is Jimmy's and Joe's over X's and O's. But when you really have something special, when you really build a program, like, the guys know who they want around and who makes them better and who will fight when it counts. And Jarvis Landry, as you mentioned, is that guy.
Yeah. I want to see this off. The last thing I'll say about this, I'm glad we did it this way. I want to see this offense I want to see that offensive line intact, and I want to see Odell and Jarvis healthy with a third, and then I want that third receiving job to be a fight like hell between Peoples-Jones, between all the others. But I just think if they can get 13 back and they get a real speed guy where you really can't put two safeties in a box, that offense will be, because of what they've already set, I just don't know how you would stop them. I really don't. And I really think, look, I will say this, and I don't mean any harm by saying this, because I got to ask the question, biggest disappointment? My biggest disappointment was the tight end position. I just thought that this offense, Harrison, I don't blame the rookie, but I'm doing something I don't like that fans do, but I'm a fan here. When you sign, and I know it's not his fault, but when you sign the contract that was signed by the tight end, and I know he was injured, I know it was a new offense. There's a lot of real reasons, not excuses. But Zach, he just never. I know he's a good blocker, but when you get that type of money, I'm not giving that type of money to a second left tackle. I'm giving that type of money to a game breaker down the middle of the field, and he's not that. He wasn't that in 2020, is what I'll say.
Yeah. I mean, listen, the decisions you make once you're good are a lot more complicated than they are before they end. So we'll see.
Yes. Who's the youngest player? Who's a young player that you expect to see more from? And we'll leave it at that.
Well, like, I know the metrics don't like Wills, and that surprises me because they seem to mesh with everything else the Browns do. I think he's got all the ability. As a first-round pick, he doesn't count. You mentioned Delpit earlier and how he can do things, or at least theoretically, that nobody else can do, and so they had high hopes for him, and that's disappointing. I think Jacob Phillips. He's the biggest, fastest linebacker they got. Yeah, he's the biggest, fastest linebacker they got. And it was always going to be kind of a redshirt year. He's 21. He's skinny. And then his injuries kind of derailed him. They did play him later in the year more, some by necessity when the COVID stuff, but some because they just wanted to see it. He has abilities that other guys don't have. So, some guys don't put it all together. And I'm not saying it's all there, like he's going to be a superstar, but there's a lot there to work with. So that's the guy that I want to see, like, once they really get comfortable with what they want to do and how you can employ guys situationally or different. He kind of reminds me of Jamie Collins a little bit, honestly, in that you could do a lot with him, right? He's different than the other guys. You better get him good at something, and you better get him comfortable. And once he gets comfortable, then you'll see him start to step out of the box. But this is the NFL, so he's got to be good at what you ask him first.
Yeah. Oh, it's funny. That was too. I was going to go Jacob Phillips too. There was a small glimpse of him, but I just loved it. He truly is, when you hear sideline to sideline type player, he fits that description. And that's and this, in the league the way it is now, and the way people spread you out, and the way people make you basically cover, every inch of the field, you need the Grant Delpits and the Jacob Phillips. I understand after watching the season why they drafted both of them. And Delpit didn't even play a snap.
You probably still need an elite quarterback too, but yes, those are the guys you need. Yes.
Yeah. And I mean, because the thing that we'll see this weekend, and the thing we saw for the last 17 weeks, the 85 Bears type defense is gone. Nobody's got that. But you do have to find some playmakers that can get you off the field 2 or 3 times a game. I just think the league is set up now for scoring. The league is set up to go up and down the field. It's basically a 7-on-7 game half the time anyway. You have to find playmakers that can run and make plays that get you off the field. And, sometimes, the Haloti Nadas, as great as and I'm using that as an example because I always remember the tug of war between the Browns taking Cameron Wembley or Haloti Nada. And it was and for as nice a guy as Cameron Wembley is, and God bless him, I love it. I think you and I and many others knew pretty soon after one game in Baltimore, we knew Haloti Nada was a better player.
Yeah, no, 15 years later, right, you need the guys that can play in space. There's no doubt.
Bingo.
There's
exactly.
No doubt. All right, Jay, I got 2 minutes. I got to return a call here.
I'm good, man. I think we plowed through a lot of stuff.
Yeah.
And I'm happy that we did. I'll give you a baseball. I'll give you baseball 30 seconds. It'll literally be 30 seconds. We're supposed to start playing next month, but I don't know if that's going to happen. But we're going to get a lot of games in this year, and it's probably going to be covered just the same way as it was last season because, well, COVID is still winning. But there will be a baseball season. I just don't know if it'll be 162. I don't know if our first game that's supposed to be on February 27th will actually go off. But I feel by, right now they keep telling the season starting April 1st in Detroit. I hope. But I would guess that the season will start no later than May 1st is my guess. There's my 30 seconds on baseball.
Will I be allowed to go to games and drink beers and tell stories about bad Browns players of the past?
Yeah. I mean, I'm pretty sure if it's before 10 o'clock p.m., I'm pretty sure you'll be good to go. I'm pretty sure we're going to have the games. Yeah. That was kind of
I thought baseball really dropped the ball last year in terms of not playing enough games at odd times so people would watch. And I know you want, is the home team on the local network, you want it at 7 because people are used to that. But, for the overall growth of the game, I'm surprised they didn't force more 5 o'clockers, 2 o'clockers,
I 100% agree with you. They missed it. Hey, I told you about the Nickelodeon game. We laugh. Most NFL football, fun adults weren't watching the Nickelodeon game. But I had a lot of people around Major League Baseball saying, and Major League Baseball screwed up again. Baseball has got to get itself out of the
dinosaur
I love
ages,
this sport.
Yeah.
They got to get out. They have to get past being they're not America's pastime anymore.
Right.
And I can say that. I love the game, and I think there's great personalities in the game, and there's great stories in the game. And I know the game it's not as fluid and as quick soccer, football, basketball. But MLB has got to get its head out of its ass. And I'm not talking about locally. I'm talking about from the top. Because they are losing young. Look, my kids like it because they have no choice. And their dad takes them to spring training every year. And their dad brings bobbleheads home. And they know they can eat ice cream out of helmets and shit like that. To get,
right.
Right. I get that. But the average kid, here, let me ask you this. Because I know how you play on this podcast. But I know you. And I know your background. And I never thought I would say this, so it's sacrilegious to say this. But I think I'm starting to get to the point that maybe baseball needs to make games 7 innings. Would you be against that?
I mean, I am an angry old white man in many aspects of my life, but no, I wouldn't be because, it would be strange. I would debate the merits of it, but it might make over 162 would make for a hell of a lot better product.
Yeah. Those middle innings, and I'm not trying to and I'm not saying that's the answer. I'm just having a conversation with Zach. I really, Zach and I, you guys know if you listen to the podcast.
Well, I'll say this: the little I know about baseball in college and the minors, when they have a doubleheader, it's 2 7-inning games.
Right.
It's different.
I mentioned that because we did that last year though in MLB on doubleheader days. They made them 7-inning games, and it was amazing to me. And I've read a couple other people say this. For as many as the old white men as you just brought up were against it originally, Zach, it was amazing how many afterwards said it really didn't bother them as much as they thought. It actually worked.
Yeah, that's one of the battles baseball fights, and we can talk about that. That to me is not the reality that the NBA faces, where they can't go below 70-some games because so much money is from the TV revenue, right? And just having the home games in general. A couple things. I wrote a column today saying that the Browns, at least if the Texans call the Browns, they at least owe it. If you actually read the column, which a few of you did, it basically said Baker is probably the guy and has earned the right, has played well. There was not one insult to him. But, guys, he's not a fifth of the player that Deshaun Watson is. You can argue with me on that, but I'm right. Okay? It wasn't a clickbait story. It was well laid out. That was that. But we thank you guys for listening. We thank you guys for your time. And I went in the comments section before the podcast started, and I was from a guy named Brett F. at 413 who said, guys, don't call this clickbait or Zach will get really upset and call you an idiot on the next A to Z. Brett, thank you for listening. The rest of you guys, thank you for listening. We do appreciate it, and we will talk to you next week.
Konnichiwa, Brett. I read all the comments from your story before that, and everybody was kissing your ass. See, that's what's wrong with you. We're going to work on you this offseason.
What they're missing is, yes, I'm an idiot, but it has nothing to do with that really well-reasoned take.
I know.
See you guys later.
Clickbait. I don't read the comments.